What's up, guys? It's John, and I wanted to just run through this week's picks today. Uh, Last week was actually like our worst week since week one. Really bad week. I did pick quite a few underdogs outright, including like the Bengals, Jags, some that would have covered but didn't win outright. I had the Cowboys, so I did pick quite a few dogs, but at the same time, still, I'm not going to make excuses. I just have certain teams that I feel like basically a lot of my picks are playoff contingent. Some teams I'm reassessing. Teams that I thought were going to go far, I might concede. Don't make much sense now. Also, a big thank you to Jake Paul and Mike Tyson, because now I think more than ever people are just starting to see, because it's been happening with Jake Paul. People understand his tactic, pay off washed guys to throw fights. But with Tyson, it was so glaringly obvious. People were so tired of that fight. And Jake Paul even admitted, essentially staying in the fight, keeping Tyson in the fight. Who would have won? You really do never know, because we don't know what kind of shape Tyson really is in. What I did say a million times is there's no way in heck Tyson's going to win the fight, because he was a 3-1 dog. So it was the biggest bet on event in the history of sports, by the way. So, like, people don't understand their greater picture. And now people are. So, they've helped our cause, because now people look at other sports and realize, okay, if it happens in boxing, why is it impossible to happen in the NFL, right? So, anyway, it makes me just believe, these things are scripted more than ever. Not that I've really ever doubted it, but other people now kind of noticing it. And once you admit it happens in boxing, you have no choice but to at least admit it's possible in other sports. So anyway, I want to go into this week's picks. So we got Ravens, Steelers, and Steelers were not a team I had making the playoffs. I did have the Ravens winning the division, which is looking, right now they're actually in second, but I think they're going to take it. But as far as the Steelers, I just don't see them as a major draw, but I do also understand Mike Tomlin and the fact that they have a defense-oriented team, kind of that hard-nosed style. And you give him Russell Wilson, I understand it. So anyway, I still wouldn't be shocked if they fizzled out. But for this game, I'm going to go with the Ravens to cover. I just like the Ravens to have a really good record. You have to have a runner-up that's pretty close to the Chiefs. And I think the Ravens are going to be that runner-up. Maybe the Bills, but I think it'll be the Ravens. So I'll take the Ravens, and I'll take them -3. We got Jags, Lions. I'm going to take the Lions to cover just immediately. A few weeks ago, and the Jags weren't in last place at the time, I had mentioned how I thought the Jags were going to probably lose out, essentially, because it makes sense to give them a first overall pick going into London, which I think is next year or the year after. So I believe that more than ever, and so obviously they're not going to win with a 14-point spread. And this just shows how Vegas robs you. Plus 550 for a 14-point spread doesn't even add up. Like, these lines are getting shorter and shorter. Like 14 used to pay you like +7, so it's just crazy. People don't really notice it, but either way, Lions are covering, and I feel like nobody is going to be taking the Lions they came back and won against the Texans, so it wasn't a decisive victory. And the Jags are still a team that's a year removed from the playoffs, or 2 years maybe. I think last year, last year the Steelers got in, and the Texans, of course. But they're a team with a Lawrence, who I think people kind of believe in, even though I never thought the guy was good. But 14 points, nobody really wants to have to lay 14 points, so I think most of the public's going to be on Jacksonville to at least cover, so I like the Lions here. It's probably just going to be an all-out bludgeoning, if I'm being honest. We got Rams, Patriots here. Interesting spread. I do think they'll have... This one makes sense for me to be an upset, to be honest. Just because I don't think the Rams are doing anything in the playoffs. I also don't think anyone's taking the Patriots here. Less than a touchdown, I would think they'd be on the Rams. So I'm going to take the Patriots to win outright. In this one, I like the Saints, because the Saints can still kind of have a shot at least staying in the division. which would keep ratings going for when they play the Bucks and Falcons. The Browns are already shot, so I like the Saints straight up. It's pretty simple there. Same thing with the Jets. I got the Jets covering because, again, even though they're essentially eliminated, they were actually plus 700 to make the playoffs, which isn't the shortest of odds, but at 3-7, I saw that and I immediately put a few bucks on it because it just seems like Vegas might know something. So I think the Jets figure a lot closer to the playoffs than people think and might even get in. So I'm going to take them to cover the 4 points. That would tie them up with the Colts, and then they'd have to catch like the Chargers or something like that. So we got Vikings, Titans here, and same deal. I got the Titans winning outright. It's another underdog. I just really don't think they're going to have like 2 teams, maybe 3, run away with the NFC North. And by run away, I just mean extend their gap that much. Because if the Bears lose here and you get the Vikings that win, it really kind of settles any kind of wild card teams the NFC North has. And I think they're going to keep it close. Also, 6 points is kind of light. The Titans are terrible. So I think they might get the upset here. So I got the Titans winning. Dolphins, Raiders, I got the Dolphins winning and covering. I think we might see them have an establishing game. They've had Tua back for a couple weeks now, so I think we might have one of those games where him and Tyreek Hill just completely go off here. And not a lot of money is going to be on this game anyway, so got the Dolphins -7. This one's tough to pick. I thought the Bears would have fired their coach by now, and the fact that they didn't makes me think they're just going to finish the season in an unimpressive manner, maybe like 8-9 or something, and then maybe fire Matt Eberflus. But at the same time, I do think that they got rid of the offensive coordinator, and unless they're just copying the Jets fired their, they fired their coach, not the offensive coordinator, but the coach, and then they brought in guys, and they blamed other guys, and I thought, okay, they're going to start winning now, and they didn't. They're still this disappointment. So I wonder if the Bears is the same, like this offensive coordinator gets scapegoated, and then they lose anyway. But at the same time, it's a lot more interesting if they win this game. Either way, I just don't. And I don't think people that think it's real have that much faith in the Bears anyway. So even though I feel like it's kind of a heavy spread at home, I'll take the Bears here. I'm going to take them to cover. I think there's a really good chance they win. But I also understand that, again, I don't think they're going anywhere with this head coach. So I wouldn't be shocked if they just kind of got rolled. But I'll take them to cover at least. Falcons, Broncos, and I would say for this game, I just look out for DJ Moore. It's a divisional game, so they're probably going to have their top weapon look pretty good. Falcons, Broncos, in this game, I like it looks like a trap to me. So normally I'd go with the Falcons because I had stated how the Broncos' early start was going to fizzle out, and I still believe that, but it doesn't mean they can't get a couple wins. And again, if the Falcons lose, then it just keeps the Saints that much closer, keeps them more interesting. And I don't care if they're at home, the Broncos shouldn't be a favorite against the Falcons. So I like the Broncos -2 because this is what I call a trap, where everyone's definitely going to be on the Falcons. So of all the games so far, Broncos covering is by far my favorite. We got Seahawks, Niners. And Niners a touchdown favorite in a year where they're not doing that good. So it could go to Seattle, but again, I do think they're the Niners. I went into this in my playoff video. I think they're winning the division, definitely. And Seahawks, I don't have making the playoffs. I'm not saying they won't be competitive, but with it being 6.5, I do like the Niners to win. The question comes down to, do they cover? And I'll say, yeah, they cover. They're really pushing Purdy, so I'll take them to cover the 6.5. Well, here you know my pick because in my very last video, I predicted the Chiefs would remain undefeated, and they did remain undefeated in the most ridiculously scripted fashion. I'll take it, but it was basically an extra point. That's how close the field goal was. And of course, it was just conveniently blocked, so the Chiefs remain undefeated. And people still question, it's kind of funny, but, I just don't. At this point, it's just like they're almost like putting it in people's faces. But I'll take the Chiefs to win straight up. Of course, they're going to make it a ridiculously close game. it's going to be like Manning and Brady when they would just have either one guy come back or just a back and forth shooting fest. Wouldn't be a bad bet to bet overtime in this game. I just there's not going to be a ton of Josh Allen Mahomes matchups going forward, and I feel like this might be a great time to give them overtime, which would be the first time since that ridiculously rigged game like 4 years ago. So yeah, I got the Chiefs winning here outright. We got Bengals Chargers. I'll take another underdog on the road. We called the Bengals coming back and making the playoffs. I think they were 0-4 in my playoff video. I don't get them all right, but we get a lot of them right. And again, Bengals winning just makes the most sense. Because if the Bengals win and the Jets win, now you have, again, you have a lot of teams. And if the Dolphins win too, you have a bunch of teams that are just one game out of the wild card in the AFC. And also, if the Chargers win, now they run away with the wild card. It just, again, it kills ratings down the road because everyone's going to know who makes the playoffs. So who wants to watch, say, Chargers play Jets? I don't know if they do. But say you get Chargers-Jets in Week 16. Who's going to watch that if the Chargers are already locked in and the Jets don't, they're locked out? It makes no sense. So after the Falcons game, this is where Broncos win, Broncos cover, and this is probably my other favorite game. I think Cincinnati definitely wins this game. There's not much at all to convince me that the Chargers win makes any sense. And then we got Texans Cowboys, and you know what? I'm going to ride with them one last time just because if the Cowboys lose, I'll concede it's not their year. Usually they're not this bad, but I honestly thought this would be the year they'd sneak them in, but it looks like that's not going to happen. But I'll stick with them one more week. We got the Battle of Texas. I'll take the Cowboys to win outright. If they lose, just so you know, my backup team is it's the Lions. I thought about the Niners, but I don't think they're going to give us a rematch. I think it'd be kind of boring. The obvious theme here would be the battle of the pop stars. Right, we would have Eminem versus Taylor Swift. Eminem, a big Lions fan, they made a point of having him come to the games towards the end of last year to kind of establish that. So now, if they went to the Super Bowl and played the Chiefs, you would have Taylor Swift on one side, Eminem on the other side. So that's one thing that's interesting to me. So, yeah, it's red versus blue. It's a Republican year. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. But if the Cowboys lose, which I'm still going to give them a little bit of credit and probably more than they deserve, but if the Cowboys lose, I really like the Lions to go to the Super Bowl. There's really no other teams that make sense to me out of the NFC. The Lions do for those reasons. And, they went far last year. They have a fun team. They're kind of a team as good as they are. If they're playing the Chiefs, they're going to be considered underdogs. So, yeah, if the Lions get bumped, or if the Cowboys get bumped, the Lions become my favorite team in the NFC. But we'll see what happens. I'm going to go with the Cowboys anyway. Like I said, I think maybe there's a chance that they just stay in the race at least and beat the Texans. And yeah, that's basically it. I do want to cover more basketball. It's just my weeks kind of run on the longer end, so I've had less time. So I've been trying my best to at least get our NFL videos out, and then when I can, I'll cover the NBA. And yeah, Paul-Tyson, we covered that months ago. Probably like 6 months ago. Whenever it was first announced, it was almost a year, I think. It was, they gave it time to build up. Like I said, it was the biggest bet on event in sports history. And immediately, it was like obvious Tyson was not going to win the thing. And I think people are starting to see that now, and they're starting to see it in other sports. So yeah, those are our picks for this week. I know we'll do better than last week. I think it's going to be one of our better weeks. I didn't take a ton of dogs. And the dogs I do have are just underdogs by a couple points. But again, as we near the playoffs, there's just certain matchups that only make sense for one team to win. So that's just kind of how I'm banking on it. And obviously just betting the opposite of where I think most of the money's going to be, because Vegas is not going to lose. So take care and happy earnings.